Hey, VMworld 2017 in Barcelona. I'm here with Jase McCarty from VMware. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
A few questions to ask about VMware vSAN, which is your specialty.
Okay. Yeah, I do focus on vSAN, and I focus on two-node stretch clusters, now encryption, one of our new features, a little bit of automation, that type of thing.
Okay, so first question. When people actually are planning for vSAN installation, they might have a question concerning if they buy a ready node, or if they try to do the design themselves for the choice of components, like they pick the storage card, or they can even reuse their old hardware. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's really one of those design decisions that needs to be made specific to how you want to maintain the environment going forward, right? So, from a bring your own perspective, you've got to do a little bit of due diligence, a little bit of homework, determining, let's say, which particular controller you're going to use, what type of drives, those kind of things. Ready nodes, a lot of that is done already for you. I'll say that ready nodes have a little bit more work than the bring your own, because they also look at, let's say this particular card may be supported for this many generations, or that type of thing. And then finally, the other choice, appliances such as VxRail, and I think we announced another one very recently. They do that whole life cycle management. Now where those kind of differ is, if you bring your own or you do a ready node, you can actually upgrade as soon as you'd like, right? A new release comes out, you can upgrade immediately, as far as that goes, provided the hardware is supported. Whereas an appliance, you may not be able to upgrade, as quickly. So it's really one of those choices that's dependent on, what the organization needs and how quickly they want to move. Do they want to be those early adopter, type people? It's really up to them.
What do you think about the question about the design when you have a single disk group or multiple disk group in each node?
So that's actually a really common question. We get it all the time. Specific to disk groups, I'm kind of under the school of thought where multiple disk groups are better, 2 or more, really depending on the workload. I will say that I've seen some cases where one of my teammates, Jeff Hunter, he's another one of the architects within Sabu that I work with. He was doing an SRM site test, if you will, failover from one site to another. Hardware was essentially identical, except one site had single disk groups, one site had dual disk groups. And to fail over to the site with single disk groups, it was a bit longer than failing back, failing back to the site that had multiple disk groups. So multiple disk groups with additional cache give us much better throughput. And you've also got a little bit better, from a fault domain perspective, a little bit more protection if you were to have some type of drive failure. So I prefer dual disk groups, at least.
When you do host maintenance, you have to evacuate the data from 2 disk groups instead of just one.
If you choose a full evacuation, we typically recommend using ensure accessibility. Really depending on how long that particular node is going to be offline for maintenance. It's going to be offline for more than 60 minutes, then yes, you do have to do a full evacuation. But if it's less than 60 minutes, it can be very quickly just use ensure accessibility, and we'll play catch up with those changes once that node's back online.
Can you tell us about some most common mistakes the admin do when they manage the vSAN environment?
Sure. So, and I come from a storage background as a customer. So I'm not just a virtualization guy. I've been a storage guy for a long time, and I worked in an environment where my boss and myself were the only 2 that did storage, which meant I did storage, right? So those storage conversations are really important. And where I'm going at with this is if you look at traditional storage, we'll do protection underneath, and we'll present that up, right? So we'll do RAID 5 below, and we'll just see a data store, right? So judging that capacity is a bit more difficult, if you will, or it's different, rather, is a better way to say it, in that with vSAN, we don't do that protection underneath, we do it on the top. And where I'm going at with this is quite often virtualization admins will look at a vSAN, let's say a 2-node, 8 terabytes, they'll say, I have 16 terabytes. No, if you employ protection, let's say mirroring with 2-node, with 8 and 8, you have 8, right? And then we really recommend some slack space on top of that. So I would say probably one of the things that people really need to focus on when it comes to looking at and working with a vSAN data store is just being aware of their capacity utilization. Yeah.
Okay. You have any tips for small clusters like maintenance or on 2-node clusters? You know, how do you do it? Do you have to stop all the VMs to do maintenance to be safe?
No, you really don't have to, right? And the way we design things is really based on what level of availability you're willing to operate under, right? So in a 2-node config or even a 3-node config for that matter, we call it, we typically use a policy of mirroring with FTT of 1 or number of failures to tolerate equals 1. If we bring one node offline for maintenance and we happen to suffer another failure, if we run into another failure, either power or other, it's not necessarily that the data is lost, but the data could just not be accessible during that time, right? So really from a 2-node perspective or even 3-node, 3-node for that matter, when we're performing maintenance, we just need to be smart and mindful of what we're doing and try to accomplish the task, within an appropriate amount of time. At the same time though, we could consider in a 2-node configuration, it might be better to have those 2 disk groups. Let's say I'm making some changes and I want to bring one disk group completely offline, rebuild it. I still have another disk group, to accommodate for space, right? I will say 2-node is taking off like a rocket. I mean, it's really, really popular. I'll say initially we thought that 2-node was going to be a big success just in those small businesses and whatnot. But we're seeing a lot of enterprise and retail customers really adhere to 2-node simply because with Direct Connect, we don't need that additional hardware from a switch. It's a great fit, great fit.
Can you share any fun or horrible story from the field, like bad design or wrong hardware used or the customer side?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a shout out, right, to one of our V experts, actually a vSAN V expert, guy by the name of Tony Reeves. He and I were talking a while back. It's been about a month and a half ago, and we were looking at his configuration. He was moving from 6.0 update 3 to 6.5 update 1, and had some questions about, I'm having some resyncs. What am I doing wrong? He wasn't doing anything wrong per se, but there are a couple little tweaks he needed to make to his environment. And once we got him upgraded to 6.5 and he added some additional tools that he wasn't aware of, if you're using, let's say, an LSI-based controller, quite often they have the store CLI tools. Added that to his environment. He last I heard, he was running a lot better. Now, kind of going a bit further with that, if you're not familiar with what we call the Customer Experience Improvement Program, CEIP. As I'm on the call with him and we're looking at his environment, I said, do you have CEIP turned on? No. And I said, why don't you have your CEIP turned on? And he said, privacy. I said, well, you have to understand we're not collecting anything that's distinguishable, right? So I don't know what the name of his vCenter is. I don't know what the name of his hosts are. I don't know what his VM names are. I don't know what the data store name is or any of that type of information. But once he turned that information on and we were able to collect a little bit of data, then I could see, okay, now wait a minute, you've got the wrong driver here. I see you've got the right firmware, those types of things. So something we added as recently as 6.2, where we can have a bit more visibility, which helps with troubleshooting as well as its point in time. So we can actually look at the history of a cluster, of the health of that cluster. And that's probably my favorite story is just that CEIP story, because everybody thinks, oh, not my data. But I wanted to show him that we actually do not, collect any data that's distinguishable, right? So, and now he's like, hey, CEIP. So, really good example. So, yeah.
And can you tell us something about the roadmap?
So roadmaps obviously are, those things that we can't really talk about, but I will say this though, and I try to give a shout out to our engineering folks and our PMs as much as I can. They're an awesome team. I've been working in software in some form or fashion on this side of the business, the virtualization community, for 7 years. Before that I was in financials and health insurance and whatnot. And our engineering folks are second to none. They'll release a feature, and then when the next release comes out, they'll even enhance those previous features, right? I've worked in environments before where It's like, well, we'll just release the feature and we'll kind of work through the bugs later. And that's not how we do it in storage and availability at VMware. New feature, but at the same time, enhance. Like one of the best enhancements I like now is the fact that we're doing resyncs so much better and so much smarter in vSAN 6.6, right? And even greater things are coming. They always are, as far as that goes. But our guys just continue to focus, execute. I couldn't be happier with the team. They're an awesome team.
Thanks very much for the interview. Thank you.